in gaming, people need to understand, who am I, what am I doing, and why should I care? This is actually like, it feels like the Three Musketeers.
I think everybody wants a story, whether it's in the game itself or it's in the participation in the game with friends.
I not only get to see I'm Cat, but I am mighty and I'm awesome. And, you know, all of the things that the art says alongside that story. So,
absolutely.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to another awesome episode of Crowdfunding Nerds. I am your host, Andrew Lowen, and I am not joined by Sean. Instead, I am joined by Marco Pecota of Raybox Games, who is a great friend of the Crowdfunding Nerds and a big crowdfunding nerd himself. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Good to be here. Brand new year, 2026. Who knows what will be next year, really. But it's an exciting year, and kind of any way you cut it.
Yeah, exciting for like all the scariest of reasons. Isn't
it? Games that they do well in the scary times. So
yeah, because people want to stay inside in their bunkers.
They want to stay inside. They want to forget about their problems in the world. It's good. It's good that there's that we have board games. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. I honestly, I know I want to introduce the episode, but my advice to people that are, there are so many, especially in the United States right now, so many headlines and things to argue about. If you just get off social media, then life is normal again.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, this is weird. Like I go, like for me, I think it's super important to have something that you do outside as a group with normal humans. I go to church, I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's like, board game night, just congregating with other people restores my faith in humanity.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Family.
Everyone's just trying to be normal.
Yeah. Family and friends. Yeah. Yeah. It's very true. And hobbies too, so.
Yeah. So to introduce this podcast, this is really meant, so this is our series we call Making Games. We want to talk about the making of particular games, and in this case, it's the Cats of Mont Saint Michel, a game of yours that has raised over $800,000 and is very successful, but is itself in a line of games that you have developed and has come as a result of making several pivots in your design career, and it itself is very successful and about to deliver to backers. And you have other games in that line that are coming out. And so we just really want to dig into what makes this game special. Why did the backers find this game worthy of their support? And what can we do, or as the people watching and listening, what can we do to replicate some level of that success for our own projects?
That would be great.
Yeah.
I hope I can help.
Simple questions.
I hope I can help lots of you. At least you find something, some sort of gem inside of this conversation that will either inspire you or give you some answers for something that you've been troubled about. Regarding game design, of course.
Yeah. So then let's start off with, what is the Cats of Mont Saint Michel?
Well, the Cats of Mont Saint Michel, it's a solo co-op game, and I'll stress solo. I will never design a game. That's not true. I already lied. I will design games that are in solo, but basically solo I think is very important for any game or any company trying to release a game. It's super, super important. So it's a solo co-op game, and it's set in revolutionary France, and you play cats. And it's a narrative campaign adventure game with miniatures or standees, depending which way you want to go. And and in the end, it's a tactical game because it's combat driven, but with lots of story, lots of lore, and lots of thematically rich. And the one thing about the game, and I'll say about all the games that I design, is I love story. I think story is super important. I think a story. I think everybody wants a story, whether it's in the game itself or it's in the participation in the game with friends. you always come away with a story where someone pulled it out of their ass at the last second and won the game, or rolled that one or the 20 or whatever it is. So people love stories. So if you're going to make a game, in my opinion, if you're going to make a game, make sure that either it's going to tell a story that people are going to love and get engaged with, or it has the mechanics and that by playing it, it creates stories. So there's a sort of conversation that comes between the players, conflict perhaps, or not even conflict. It could, it doesn't have to be conflict, but it could be like the co-op stuff. But enough interaction that's a story happens, and then you remember that, right?
I think that the there's a book that was Simon Sinek wrote called Start with Why, and I find in gaming people need to understand who am I, what am I doing, and why should I care, and how do I win is a part of that, but we're cats. Yeah, I think about immediately the Broadway musical, of like crazy people wearing fuzzy outfits or whatever. But this is actually like it feels like the Three Musketeers in a lot of ways, and it's really interesting. And I think part of what the why do I care, what am I doing, who am I, the art is key to combo with the story to kind of place me into that spot. So like whenever it's like, all right, you're cats. If the game itself is doing the talking and I'm looking at the box cover, I not only get to see I'm cat, but I am mighty and I'm awesome. And, all of the things that the art says alongside that story. So
Absolutely.
Maybe we could dig into the art a little bit. I mean, first of all, we were talking before this podcast about how much story matters to like pull people in from a marketing perspective. If you start out with like, buy this game, it's like what that means nothing to me as a consumer.
Yeah, that's
but if you start out
that's
with
the thing. Like there's lots of games out there, and I think that you need to basically, whether the consumer or the player who's looking at it, you have to have some emotional resonance with that person. They look at it and they feel something. It could even just be simple as a dopamine rush, like like, oh my god, this would be so awesome. But it could be also more subtle, and it can be more intimate. Whatever you're doing to marketing, and there's different, so yeah, I think that our art and the art that gets created out there has to be, has to create stir some sort of emotion in the person, right? And I think that the game, like, then has to follow through with what you're portraying, right? And in our case, it does like really well. Like, well, I guess the fans will be the judge.
Yeah, I'm mind blown by how well the game, the story, the art translates into like the miniatures and what it is that you're tactically doing. That's one thing that I'll say for our listeners. You have found a way to blend those elements in a way that is really like every corner that you look in the universe of this game is it seems like there's something that you've thought through over there, and it's not
a lot of work,
thrown together at the edges.
Yeah, right? No, not at all. Yeah, you're right. It's a lot of thought, and but taking up on the art part. So we were looking for an artist that could create something. And for those who haven't seen the art, it's the Cats of Mont Saint-Michel. If you check it out, most you can kind of see what it looks like. And but we were looking to portray the game, without the same art style that a lot of games are coming out with. And there's kind of a standard brew of what the game cover is going to look like. And a few people throw in curveballs. Well, I want you to throw in a curveball, not as far as some really crazy curveballs. But so it didn't look like the rest of the games that are out there, really. Like and so I ended up finding this artist Omar Rayan, an American dude, and his art was just like really spectacular. It had to do with all kinds of animals. And the thing is that the biggest thing about the art, when you look at our art, our miniatures and stuff like that, is that his art has emotion. That character he drew, or the characters, you can see that they're thinking that something is going on. And as a viewer, that's just gonna come out to you. Like when it's an action photo or illustration, there's nothing wrong with that. Sure, it's cool or whatever, but that's one thing. And you're saying, oh, this is actiony, and it looks like it might be, especially if you're into it, like dangerous and cool or dark or horrific. But when you see that piece of art and the characters are speaking to you from that page or from that cover, like, how could you not want that? How could you not want the most evocative cover that's when people look at it, they connect with it, they see something happen. There's an emotion coming from the character on the thing, and so that gets transmitted to you. So you want to find an artist who can
Yep.
give that punch, bring it right over. And Omar does it in spades, and it's like my other. If you look at my other covers and stuff, everyone has there's how do I personally connect with the person looking at this? Okay, now uh, uh, it really is about when someone looks at this, they have to personally connect with it, not just to think it's cool or whatever. So that's what you want to strive at. When you work with your artists, you want just to look at the cover art we're doing. Of course, if you're doing a Euro game and it's whatever, you have to figure out a different way to do that. And I'm not an expert in Euro games at all, so but certainly even in there, you want to have something that's evocative that makes them think. But for the type of games that we do, and lots of people do, thematically, you want to connect with the person. You want them to look at it. So you want to tell your artist, look, whatever you're doing, I want it to connect with whoever's looking at it. That they must there's some emotional transmission that's going to go on, and they can't. As a viewer, you can't ignore that. It's like instinctual when it comes to you. When the piece of art resonates with you very quickly, and that's just going to come. And so how do you buy that, so to speak? Like as a marketing thing, if you're put it on the shelf, we wanted people to resonate with it, and that it's got to be a bit of magic there. And so you got to demand that from your artist in a way, and find the right one that's going to make it do what you want it to.
I think that I'd actually to dig into the art on the box cover a little bit further, as and answer the question, how do we get people to resonate and that kind of thing. And my kind of immediate advice, or the things that come to my head, because I design games very similar. My, Deliverance is super thematic, and the cover. I always look at the cover as a promise of what's inside this box. Like the experience that you're going to get inside this box is what this cover is trying to show you.
Yeah.
It's like Deliverance, you're going to be an angel slaying demons and overwhelmed by hordes of demons, but you're super epically powerful and whatever. But and it's like dark, the light is getting its butt kicked. They're at the gates of heaven, and it's up to you to push back, right? Yeah. And I think your covers do something really, really great as well. So like, I think some things that have gone through a number of iterations. One is that it needs to be it needs to really have like a central focal point that people can look at. And I find that, like, for example,
if you're talking composition wise, so just to be clear, talk about composition. Yeah. Your artist should know that shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But anyways,
but sometimes people can direct them backwards. Yeah. So like the so one focal point with and then the rest is like candy around the outside, but the focal point is where they look and they say, yeah, that's something interesting, or I don't understand what I'm looking at. Their brain just does this quick thing. And you have in Cats of New Orleans, actually, we're talking about this, which is a follow-up. There's like a group of characters that are all kind of interacting with one another. And then beyond the characters, there's what looks to me like a boss, which is like a snapping turtle.
Yeah, it's kind of like the dragon turtle look to it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And then the in addition to like the focal point that is clear, I think the cover needs to show tension, some kind of tension. Like if everything's going to be all right, maybe that's there are some games that are like that,
Well,
that are like,
if tension's what you're going for, like there's games that are
yeah,
more tranquil, and so it's, yeah, he's got to show what you're the emotional thing that's going to happen, like in the box, so to speak. Yeah,
yeah, I guess that's a better way to put it. So what other things? Oh, one thing I'll also say is that if if your game is on like a local game store's shelf, they may put the box covers front and center, which is really
yeah,
excellent. But then what if they put it on the side? And I thought, initially I really, really wanted my artist for the first game to wrap the cover around the sides. So it was like this really cool, like the battle continues on the
yeah,
sides. But we elected not to do that because, first of all, that's like super expensive, comparative to, it's just a big, very costly thing. But then there's the focal points on the side. You just need to have the coolest thing that you could possibly, somebody needs to look at that on the shelf and be like, I want to take that off and read
yeah. You
more,
want it to be
right?
iconic,
Examine
like more of an
closer.
iconic, like it's so yeah. And I'm gonna say something. I don't know how controversial it might be, but that when you're starting out, unless you've got distribution already, uh, don't worry too much about retailers. It's not like don't do stupid stuff like not make the cover the way it's supposed to be, like making sides that have the name on it. Sure, right, but the focus you have. This is what I've come to learn is I have retailers now, and that's growing. But most of my clients, by like 95%, are still going to be consumers because I'm at the level where it's Kickstarter or whatever. So this is not to refute what you said at all, but retailers you shouldn't be doing things that are for retailers if it takes away at all from selling it directly to a consumer. Like, what does the consumer want? This guy here, these are guys are going to be my fans. These are the ones I'm working really hard to get. The retailers are very picky, 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 picky. In fact, they might not like my game at all for 100,000 reasons, right? Including the fact that they got too many games. So, um, focus on what does the don't think about too much. Like if this was on a shelf, how would it look? Because of a retail store. Because before you get there, you need a lot of rivers to cross. A lot of rivers to cross before that even matters. Because if you get two retailers, I mean, it's good to get some. But before it matters, long way to go. I've been doing this for 5 years. I've been doing a lot, but 5 years, lately, and I've had retailers. I don't know, a dozen or so, or a bit more than that, because we have distribution. So I don't even know how many retailers we have, but it's not like hundreds yet. So only now, with Asmodee coming on, these other distributors are a bit bigger, and things are we starting to disseminate our product further, and it matters more now. And I have to be way more conscientious, and I even ask retailers what they want. But up until more or less, like last year, I guess the thing is focus on your core audience, which is the people you sell direct to now, and
Yep.
yeah, and make sure that it works for them primarily. That's the number one thing, whether it's art or whatever aspect it is to it. Yeah. And if we're
Yep.
talking about
You
art,
know, um, no, go
well,
ahead.
then
Go
you can
ahead.
talk about
Continue.
miniatures too,
Continue.
because we make miniatures. A lot of people, okay, a lot of game designers hate miniatures. There's a sliver of designers who don't, but I think it's what many of you, and I'm presume, well, I think that a lot of people, based on the chatter and that, is look at the games that are really doing well. They have lots of miniatures, they have this big huge production, and they have all these extra things, and they have 100 different stretch goals, and these guys are pulling in millions, and it's taking away from, perhaps it's taking away from what we can do, or from the market, or what people have to spend. And do you have to really do that? Like, why is it feel like you're being forced to do miniatures or something of that grandness to capture the imagination and get people? It just feels like it's just escalating it. To get into the business is getting harder and harder because it's costing more money to do it. And all those feelings are basically kind of true, but it still doesn't stop good games with still good art, of singing and without miniatures. So
Mhm.
miniatures is just one part of the market. It just happens that a lot of consumers like miniatures. So companies are making games with miniatures. I love miniatures. So the games I make going to have miniatures. Like it wouldn't
Yep.
matter what the game was if I could put miniatures in it, but it's not because it didn't start as I want to sell more games, so I'll put miniatures in it. Mine was I'm making games with miniatures. That's how I felt, and it turned out that making miniatures was good if you can get to the point where you can make them there because they're expensive and there's other things that are involved, right? So I guess the
Yep.
point is that it's a segment of the market that wants miniatures, and if you're not interested in miniatures or want to do it, it's fine. Like, but it's not like these guys who are making the miniature games are taking away from the non-miniature games because that's another segment. It's a different segment. It's just different. So what I wanted to say about with miniatures, though, I decided to do them because I love them first. But I also found them to be an excellent marketing tool because they're, of course, very visual. And if you do really cool miniatures, they too can impart emotion and stuff. I have some miniatures here. Here I got, I don't know how well they're going to show up, but there's Guy. He is, let's see if we can get it to focus. Please focus, focus. There it kind of focuses, maybe. Oh, wait, there he was. There's a sweet spot. But Guy is very serious, and he's a swashbuckler, and he's an awesome looking miniature, I think, and he's really well painted. That's one of our heroes. And here's one of our villains.
Who does your painting?
Yeah.
Do you have like a local person that
No,
does painting?
I have him painted in Poland. I went with a good company, and they can give me all kinds of stuff.
This episode is brought to you by Hero Time Manufacturing. That is Hero Time, the numeral 1.com. Hirsch Gleck has been a regular on our podcast. We highly recommend his services. He is a man of integrity. Hero Time, they can make anything. They've got competitive pricing, and they even do game prototypes. So make sure to check out Hero Time, numeral1.com. A link is in the show notes. And if you use the code crowdfundingnerds101, you can get a 3% discount on your production through them. Let's get back into the episode.
So, it's a very evocative, action-oriented miniature, got lots of details on it and stuff like that. Okay, but the point is that when I make that miniature, I have a sketch, and so I can share that sketch with my community. Hey, we're working on this miniature. Check out what the things are. So it's an asset. There we go. It's an asset. People are kind of thinking about. They're getting to see some stuff, and then you're going to have a render of the miniature. Then you can share that, and people can see more stuff. You have lots of things that you have that to share. Then you can get the miniature sculpted and painted. Then you can show that off, and then you can show off the miniature in an environment, make up a little environment revolutionary France, put it near a guillotine or whatever. And then you share that, and everyone's like, "Oh, cool! Look at it's it." And then you can take several miniatures and put them together, and then take a picture of that. So there's so many things that come out of making miniatures, if that's the route you'd like to take. And every dime that's put into that is really marketing, right? It's going to end up in the game, but really it's marketing. So you're able to leverage that one miniature design into 10 or more social posts, right? And then when you combine it with other miniatures, you can just keep going, and you can create little stories around each one of those things. Now, again, the type of games I do are story-driven games, so that's important for what I'm doing. But stories are important for everything. So whatever you're doing with your game, if it's trains, if planes or automobiles, make sure it has a story, at least a story that people can connect with, even if the game isn't about a story every step of the way. But you got to have a story. Why am I here? Like you said. So that's my bit on miniatures.
Now,
I
want to drill deeper into that because we haven't really talked about this before, but I was commenting actually before the podcast about the various miniatures of yours in Cats of Mont Saint Michel and again the Cats of New Orleans that they're very dynamically posed. And what makes a miniature attractive? Why do you pose them in a certain way? Do you give your people that sculpt your miniatures instruction that are what do you see? I know. Let me digress for just a little bit.
I know what you're asking.
People want miniatures in active poses
for the most part.
I find that sometimes as a marketer, when I take a game that has miniatures, sometimes they just seem so restrained and yours are very cool. And it's not just the fact that they're painted really well, but they're sculpted really well too. And I know you have a hand in that.
Absolutely.
To figure out, to give direction.
Oh, absolutely.
So what are what are your main, like, if you give people some advice
Well,
on
okay.
how
First of
you
all,
sculpt
I hope
yours?
there's some miniature game designers out there who are listening to this. And I don't want to tune out you guys who don't do miniatures, so please stick around because we're not just going to be talking about miniatures, okay? But I'd encourage anyone who can, kind of to include even 4 miniatures. Like, it's not like you have to do it, just you'll start attracting a different crowd. Before I go into the little bit, like, let's say you had 4 miniatures. Well, that's suddenly more people that, oh wow, they actually I like miniatures. This company has miniatures. Oh, it has 4 really cool ones though. So okay, that's cool. Like, just you can tap into a bit of a different market even if you just put in 4. Your 4 main characters. Everything else is standees and whatever. Like, uh, Jaws of the Lion and those something. They didn't put a ton. They put the big one, whatever. Gloomhaven had a lot, but none of the enemies. It's all like your heroes, right? So you can go the route where you just do a few miniatures.
That's what we did for
Yeah,
Deliverance.
what you have, we
like
had
the
way more
angels
than
or the minis.
you had more than 4, but you can just do 4 or 5. How many players there are? I mean, hell, let's think about it. Monopoly does it, so they must have figured something out. Okay. So to what? So I think it's something to consider. I'm open to people asking questions about that more in the future, or what they should do. It doesn't have to be super expensive. I mean, we won't go into the thing that you can't just design a game with no money at all. It's, if this is a passion thing, then you got to think about what I can do to raise money so I have money to then spend to make it good, right? That's a whole other thing. Man, we've made so many miniatures now. Every time it comes to a new miniature, it's like, what are we going to do for this one? But it always ends up working out. So what we do, okay, what I do practically is I go on Pinterest and I go, miniature poses. Not exactly. It'll be like, okay, it's like martial arts with a bow stick poses. And then there'll be literally a sheet that has like 14 poses on it. Or like zombie poses. And then some of them suck, some of them are good. And as you pick like warlock, warlock fighting off goblins, and then you'll get a bunch of those pictures. Oh, that's a cool pose. Well, that one's kind of, but his feet are kind of wrong, won't fit on the base. Okay, let's use that. What is that? And then we'll do this, right? So that's what I do. It's like the easy answer is go to Pinterest, kind of type in what your search engine. It's better than searching on Google, by the way, for whatever reason. Go to Pinterest and do it, and then you can get find what you want. But you can find a lot of choices, but you still got to choose the one that's going to make sense for it, right? And you can tweak it from there. And when you talk to your sculptor, I'll show them a pose that I like, and I might tweak it, right? And often what I look at, it's the dynamics of what that figure can offer. So if they've got a robe, I want that robe flowing, period. So we have, for example, in the cats of New Orleans, we have a shootist, right? And she is she's a prairie dog, actually, so she's not a cat, but she's with the cats, right? She's taking one pistol here and she's turning this way. So it's like this really, like, it's going to end up in the coolest motion right? So as she's twisting, the body's twisting. This is I forget where I found the pose. It was something like that. But I knew that I wanted her. She had a long jacket. I want her twisting. I want her moving because the jacket flares out. The hand's about to come out. So you want to use the characteristics of the character, hero, villain, or whatever and then supplement it. And then we had another one who's a crane. She's a thrill killer, so she's an assassin, a crane assassin. Busy picture, big difference. Bang, you're dead. Anyways, so she's got wings, of course, and they're big, and cranes are big, and so we just took the wings and spread it out, and really gave her a lot of breadth. And since she's one of the primary villains, we made her a bit bigger and stuff like that. Not hugely bigger, but big enough to make her imposing. So there's those things you're thinking about too. And one thing I would think about is, anecdotally, this is a story. When I first did the first game, Escape from Stalingrad Z, World War II zombie stuff, I had all these designs. They were quite as dynamic, but they were dynamic. There was some that weren't. And I really wanted my zombie to have its hand out like this, like it was almost asking for your heart or your brain, right? And then the Chinese came back to me And by the way, you don't have to use China to do steel molds. If you're going to do lower quantities, there's other ways to do it. They do them in Europe and in the States, where it's a bit more expensive. It's more expensive per unit, but you don't have to invest all this money up front. Okay, as much money. Anyways, so the Chinese were like, okay, well, this is, we suggest you put the hand down here, kind of wherever. It gets hard to see with this thing. But anyways, the point is that I'm like, it's more expensive to do it the other way. It was my first game. I'm like, okay, all right, fine, just leave it like that. I don't really like it or whatever. So then, this is anecdotal, it's specific to my case. But then I go to the next one, which is Escape from Project Riza, and I'm like, okay, I want it more dynamic this time. Like, how much more does it cost me if I really want to have it? And they're like, it's a penny. It's 1 penny more, and I'm going to produce whatever 2,000 of them. So it's like, I don't know, a couple $100 or like not like when you in the overall scope of it, it's like, I didn't realize it was a penny. It's like, dudes, just do it the way I want. I don't care if it's a penny more. But I think everybody goes in there trying to save money and get it as cheap as possible. And it's you're working with China, not that they're cheap because they create high quality stuff as well as cheap stuff too. It's like, no, dude, man, like I want to create cool stuff, and that's going to resonate with my people when they see this. And it's like, I'm not like thinking directly, I'll sell more of these because it's cooler, but really in the end, you've got a better product. So, over time, as people talk about it, whatever, you're going to sell more. There's my take on don't cheap out when it comes to poses.
That's awesome. I love the advice. And I actually, when I did my first round of Deliverance minis, I had our art that was finished and, for each character. Yeah. But the characters in some cases, like Michael the Archangel, was in a really static pose on his character card. But that's important because we had a portrait shape for his art. Right. But then I wanted him in just to look more active. So the way that I was like, okay, sculptor, do this thing. And he came back with Michael's wings were out more and his sword was drawn, and it looked like he was about to like lift it over his head. And it was like a small little thing that I looked at and I said, that's cool. It's like, that's all you're looking for from your backer is that's kind of cool. And a lot of people, when they see the various miniatures, they will oftentimes pick the miniature based on the pose. And like I have a miniature in front of me right here. It's let's see how
you put your hand behind it, not in front of it.
Focus. Okay. So here we
go.
There,
it's cool.
So there's
I love it.
There's the stalking line.
That is awesome.
And so this is so we have a stalking version, and then we have a version that's like reared up, and his wings are actually in the shape of a heart.
Very nice sculpt.
But the one in front of me was stalking, and so part of it was just trusting on in my miniature sculptor that he knew what he's doing, But I think it really, really, really helps to give them a starting point.
You have to.
Like here's what
It's great. Look, I got a really good sculptor, and he'll come back with stuff, and I'll repose it because I realize, no, we didn't get it. So they're not going to always land it. Don't be afraid that if you're working with sculptors, they can change stuff. Maybe it'll cost a bit more money. Maybe it won't. It's, But I have gone back to the board. I paid for a sculpt and then trashed it and just lost the money. Like, we're not going to release this. I don't like it. And I didn't feel like I wanted to. There's only so much I could have done with the guy. And it's like, I paid for it, but I'm not going to use this thing. And I'll just get it redone. And I've done that a few times. I'm just not going to put something out there that I don't think is good. So, but you definitely don't rely just on, you got like I do with all my artists. There's a certain amount, especially if you start working with the artists, where you can give them liberties, right? And certainly they should do sketches before, which you have to approve before they ink it and do all the other stuff, right? But you still got to give them some notes on it, what you want to do. If this color, I always talk about what colors I want. That's so important. What's on your box, you want it to, you want the color scheme to match what you're trying to sell, right? And create a mood. So that's why when you go into a nice restaurant that you're supposed to, they have the lights down and you can, and you feel like a bit more intimate. It's not like at a mall, but that's got its own thing. If you want to sell a mall game, then that's that, right? So anyways, Yeah, so you've definitely got to direct your artist. Don't feel like you don't know. Just look at what you like. Like just use inspiration from this game. I love. This is awesome. I love this. I really love. Uh, you know, Flash Gordon stuff, that old stuff. So, you know, you can look at those pieces of art. How are they composed? What do they have in them? What colors are they using? Right? You don't have to know this shit off the top of your head. You can just look at it, spend some time. Right? It's fun. It's easy as in just Harry, whatever the thematic Cthulhu uh, pictures, and then you just look at them and cover art, and then you just look and you get to look through cool stuff. Oh, that one's cool. And if you got a friend or whatever, just have them with you too, and they can all like talk about the cool stuff you're seeing and decide on something, and then you can use those as reference for the person who's doing the art.
Very cool. Now, I want to dig into the actual mechanics of the game that you have, and there are a couple of pieces that are really fun, and we can cut them apart and talk about whatever is interesting. And my goal is to kind of uncover what is innovative about the experience here. And we've already talked about the theme and how the art and various like components, like the miniatures, contribute to that, to the overall experience, but let's talk about mechanics wise. So it's a scenario based game that's cooperative with a really strong solo mode.
Designed primarily as solo.
Book. And so you have a campaign book where you play inside the book.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing that you have done.
Yeah.
So you have leveling up that happens in there. You've got tactical combat that happens in there. So let's tackle each of these things. But the first one, so solo is a really big. So what's the gameplay maximum? 4 players?
In this one, yes.
4?
But I'd say it plays best at 2.
So,
yeah.
Okay. Then the scenarios are fast, and the campaign book, when you play inside the book, my first question is, how do you keep it tight enough to actually play inside the book?
I know.
To open the book, have the story in there or whatever,
like
mechanics of the game, and play.
So there's historically, or not, there's a date in time in my life, which is about 5 odd years ago, where their epiphany came, where that worked. I'll tell you anecdotally what happened. But first I wanted to say is the game that I designed is that style of game, which is a story-driven game. So some of you guys are just doing board games, and they're like, not just board games, but board games that have different types of things. One's resource management, maybe, or whatever, worker placement or whatever it is. I played them all. And the type of game I'm doing is a tactical combat game, but with a lot of RPG elements and story. Okay, so it's kind of like not D&D, or it's not a role-playing game, but there are elements of it because you're discovering story, you're making choices and things like that. But you're also fighting, so it's people who like to, want their characters to fight and overcome. Some of the things that I have talked about, and we'll talk about, pertain to everything. So I hope it's useful for those of you doing games that are very dissimilar to the one I'm doing, but still find value in the things that we're talking about. So when it comes to rules, I mean, man, everything's been done a million times, right? And when I first decided to create a game, well, what I did is I answered problems and complaints. So the big things that people were complaining about, especially with miniature style games, there was like Gloomhaven had coming out, and Frost, like there was all these big monster games. And so what's the problem? How often is that, can you get that to the table? And like, I've got some that I'm never going to bring it to the table. Like, because there's all these options of smaller games. It's easier. It's like so difficult to bring that to the table. So it's like, okay, they're too big.
It's take an hour to set it up, and it's 2 to 3 hours to play.
The complaints are, it's too big, takes up too much space, takes too long to play. Even to put it away takes forever, right? And I forgot one of my other big selling points. But the thing is that I took each of those questions or each of those complaints and addressed them in the game design. It's like, okay, if it takes too much space, how do we create an immersive game in a smaller space. And I thought of the idea of putting it in a book. At the time, I thought I was the only one who came up with that idea. But Gloomhaven had come out, and there was some other things. So it wasn't me. I wasn't first. In my mind, I didn't know any other game that did it. But it was right at the beginning when this now more and more games are doing it, right? So this creates a small platform where you can play on. In fact, the size of an open book. Then you have your character cards and all their information. You just set them to the side, and then at that point, that's your game and your markers that are sitting. Your markers and tokens. That's your game. You're complete all there. So then the question was when I first designed is, can you make an engaging game on one 8.5 by 11 sheet? That's tactical, is fun, isn't boring. Like you can actually do things. It's not just like running off, And I didn't know, so I had to do it. So I'd set it out, and I had Tom play it, who works with me now, Tom Frank, and does a lot of writing. So I'll just give him the kudos now before I forget. Tom Frank, kudos, great writer, works on all the games that we work on, and we played it, and gosh darn it, it just freaking worked right off the hop. Just like this just works. I was afraid it wouldn't. It totally worked. And so that's I don't know. I just it's just like I don't know if it's gonna work. I didn't know what to do to make it work, but however it came out right off the hop, is it work? And probably like as far as like mechanically for anyone who's trying to do something small, and I encourage other people to do this format. It doesn't have to be huge. Like I'm working on games now that are 10 scenarios long, not 30 or 40. Like you can do more compact stuff. The Mandalorian board game has like 5 maps in it, but you reuse a bit. I played it, I didn't like it that much. But anyways, it had some good mechanic things. But the thing is, you want to slow it down when it gets in there. So you got to make sure that your characters can only move so far. So the mechanic for movement you can't have a mechanic that suddenly you can get halfway across the board in one, and then halfway, and then you're kind of feels like it might finish, right? So one is they can't move far, and 2, you have to hinder their movement with the enemy. So what I did in that case is gave what in kind of tactical war game speak is zones of control. As soon as there's zones of control, you have your miniature, but that's your opponent's miniature, like the zombie you're fighting against, or the villain, the rat, or whatever, and everything around it. If you move into one of those squares or hexes, you have to stop. So suddenly now those things are going to slow you right down. So you need that sort of mechanic where you're slowing stuff up.
Okay.
And think about, of course, as a player, like I want to get across here faster. Now, by the way, each scenario has its own different things. It's not just about either killing everything or getting off the map. It is other, you have to do this lever, you have to search this area, and then something changes once you search it because you read an entry and blah, blah, blah. But what you do when you're working in a small area is you want to create stuff that's going to slow down your player characters, terrain, and opponents. So you got to put enough of that stuff in there. And it comes up as trial and error. I add too few things, or I put too much. So you got to play test your own thing, right? The fact that it's solo lets you play test it. You just do it. You don't have to wait for anybody. No one has to give permission. You just literally freaking do it. That's why I start. Well, it was right in the pandemic time too. So you got many reasons. Anyways. So it ended up working, and that works, by making sure that there's enough things that are happening that you can't just finish them quickly, and that it's challenging because you give them enough tactical hooks. Okay, so enough tactical things that they need to think about. So they have to worry about movement. They have to worry about the enemy attacking them. They have to worry about the zone of control of the enemy. They have to worry about being in cover, like if something's going to make it harder for them to get killed, their enemy being covered. There's all these little things. If you're designing a game miniature combat, you probably played some of these games already. So, you got a lot to work with. And if you're interested in creating something like that, then play some games and you'll find out. So, you need to create those sort of things. Yeah. And
I'll say that people really like when a map has some like spaces that cause that maybe like a pit trap where you fall in. If you move into that space, you take 1 damage, but it might be a little faster to get through this this area if you just run through all the pit traps, but it's not very healthy for you to do that. versus like a map that is in essence like a blank set of squares that you could do whatever you wanted, and the only thing that influences your decision are the other components you put on top of the
Right.
squares. We actually ended up going with we have enemies in Deliverance. We have enemies, then we have tokens that we place that then kind of represent objectives on the map. And so I think that your objective, so you're kind of giving objectives through like the goal of the mission.
Yeah.
So you're like, hey, get off the map, this is your area of escape, or of course you could have defeat all enemies, and other things.
Yeah, I do
that.
like worship.
But then what are
place the crystal skull in the shrine, and then press 3 levers, and then get off the map. But of course, on the way to get that objective, other shit can happen too, right? So
yeah, and so I guess a question for you is like, what are objectives like when you play a game and it's like a particular scenario and you say set up, you have instructions that are like, you start here, enemies are in these various positions, probably based on the player count or something like that. What other things do you have that you put on the board that I might care about as a player? Is there like a question mark or a treasure chest or anything like that?
There are, in our case, there's objective squares, and then there's loot squares. It's like for the cats. But there's like the objectives, like, okay, there's one in this one scenario.
Tabletone is a phenomenal app. I use it every time I play tabletop role-playing games with my family. It greatly enhances the immersive experience. In fact, it's night and day using it and not using it. It can also be used for board games or any card game. It's great background music. It's made by a company based in Austria who have their own studio, who have developed their own software specifically to cater to your specific needs within the different game settings. So you can control intensity, there's different background noises. You can get it for free, and there's also a trial that you can run for 2 weeks that will give you full access to their entire catalog of sounds and audio. Definitely check it out. Link is in the description. Visit tabletone.app for more details.
Okay, the first one, every scenario has to feel a bit different, right? You don't want there to be like every time you go into oh, look at the zombies. Okay, that's cool. Fight the zombies. Next one. Look, there's zombies. Oh, yeah, great. Right. Then you go like, next one's just going to nut zombies again, right? So you want to flavor each one differently. So, for example, we have all kinds of things at different objectives. We have bridges that are going to collapse, so you got to get across them. We've got bridges and stuff where you want to cut the rope so that they don't follow you. You've got different, you have to extinguish the candles so that the toxic chemicals that are in them stop, and then allows you to pass. Or you can choose to run through them, and maybe one of you guys can get across while they do something else, and then you do that, and then there's those type of things. And recently we had one, and it's set in Hades, and which is the 5th level, in Dante's Inferno, and or is it the 4th? Anyways, it doesn't matter. I'll have to check it again. But basically, it's molten metal, and there's like you're on these crevasses and this land, but there's huge chasms with molten metal, and you can't get across, right? So there are these mechanisms that you can turn, and there's 2 of them. And by turning them, you roll a d12, and it will create pieces of kind of bridge or whatever that'll cross the chasm. But they're all over the place. There's not like one. It's not. You have to get several to get. Anyways, the thing is that you're going to have to be challenged by, one is you're rolling, so it's random. But at the second time, you do have choices because there's 12 spaces, but you only have 6 pieces of the bridge. So, and they're like basically magical at that point. They're coming up. They're just, you can imagine them like big stones rising from the lava, then allowing you passage, and then collapsing again or whatever like that. So that's the kind of what's going on. And you're a cat, like your kitten is been taken away. You've got to get to her. You're frantically trying to get across, and it's steaming and it's hot and it smells like sulfur and shit. And you like hate it, but you got to get across. So you're doing that. But so there's that. Okay, so those are elements that need to happen for you to be able to make it to the objective, to be able to get off the map. But there are these 2 treasure rooms that are not near where you have to exit the map, and you could choose to go there first, but those particular, so let's say you're doing it, you don't get the map, you don't get the direct route, right? It's unlikely you'll get it right away. You might, but but you get a route to one of these treasure rooms, so you can now choose to, well, maybe we'll go for the treasure room, then we'll have to come back and then try to get the other one. But those are choices that you got to make. And so now it's not just this is the objective, but then there's these lures. You want to lure people into like, am I willing to go for that? Like it's risky, but who knows what I'm going to get? It sounds pretty cool, And I guess that's kind of an explanation of more detailed explanation of one particular scenario. But kind of all scenarios going to have, you're going to have a few of them that are just a straight up fight it out, right? And the other thing that we do is our opponents have different abilities and skills, and they actually change over time and they get more powerful. So you might meet them with a new skill that you haven't encountered before. So tactically, you have to do something different. And another thing that we do is that we encourage people, for example, in this new one that has cards with the villains, not even don't read up on the villains. Only when you encounter them the first time, right? Will you then draw that, look more closely at the card and find out what they do. So you're not anticipating, you can't okay, well, I know in the fourth scenario, so-and-so shows up. So make sure we stock up with holy water or whatever, right? So you won't know. And, but those are elements that play into the whole story, but they play into the missions, they play into the scenarios, and they play into your tactics. And that's a really simple one. You just don't look at it. You won't know. And also it'll be surprised. And then I just see players are like, oh my God. And you want that. Because they're like, oh, how are we going to beat this thing? Well, you're going to figure it out. We didn't make a game you can't win. But that whole build up, fun.
Yeah. Another thing that's really fun is watching players designing my own missions, watching players figure out tactically the right move by trying the wrong thing and failing. And we got to play again, guys, and then they have this discussion of how tactically they're going to do something different. And it's really a joy to find, that to see your players interact with your thing and discover that ideal strategy that might not have been apparent.
I have gone to bed after Space Hulk or other kinds of games, without beating it, and in my mind, not going to sleep, trying to, okay, what am I going to do different once I wake up tomorrow? Yeah. When I get a chance, I go to bed thinking of this shit. Less nowadays because I have other problems. But when I was a kid with very few problems, that was something. Absolutely, yeah. It's how am I going to solve this problem? It just didn't work. What did we do wrong? What was wrong? And then you hopefully come up with a good solution.
There are so when we are working on our Council of the Fallen expansion, we just finished the campaign and everything, and the way that we did our first game, we kind of started with the end in mind, this is the big bad guy, this is the plot that is going on here, and then how are the angels, the idea was the angels are going to discover what's going on over the course of time. But then a lot of our story we developed as we developed missions, and sometimes we do it the next mission of I want to do this cool mechanic, and then the next one was well, the story has to go in this direction, so let's design a mission around the story. And so what we've done in the expansion, we kind of just were flying by the seat of our pants at the time, and it ended up working out because we spent a lot of time on it. But for the expansion, we're these are the major story beats. We're these are the major story beats that must happen, and this is kind of where the angels start, and this is where the angels finish. So because the major story beats with for us, it's humans dealing with things, and then what's the devil doing, and then what are the Council of the Fallen? They're this rogue sect of demons that rebelled against the devil, and what are they doing? And some of the things were okay, we have a spoiler moment that I don't want to tell everybody.
Sure, you want to tell everyone, in fact, but you're not going to. But
I do. But it involves a fire, a very significant fire, right. And we're that we need something to represent this fire, and we came up with a boss we call him Grimburn, that you're trying to put out this fire and rescue people, but as you kill this boss, he saps the fire and revives. And so fire is happening and you're dealing with this boss. And if you don't kill the boss, you're gonna lose. Like he's gonna spawn more fire and whatever.
Sure.
But by killing the boss, you're also wasting time.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, it's a choice between
you've got to
either
rescue these people.
weighing one thing against the next, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, I can tell you. For
and
me,
it creates this really fun.
We create a matrix. So we don't like. I have literally a matrix, like 27, 30 scenarios, whatever it is we're doing now, and I created a very special matrix, like formulated it over the span of 4 games to find the perfect matrix. If you want to do a choose your own adventure, and a more manageable. So we create a matrix. So we know everything is basically plotted out before. At least we have titles. Sometimes just titles, but titles are cool. Like the decrepit swamp. Okay, well, something swampy will be in there, right? But basically we do kind of plot it out. As far as how we do it, we have it all plotted out. I actually know what scenario goes to which one, depending on your choices and that sort of thing. And there's a little summary. So we do that. And the other thing that we do is we create our characters, our dramatis personae, so to speak. So we have our list of heroes and their names and their description. And then we have our villains and their names and their description. And then we start kind of, recognizing that, you need your ranger type, you need your, like, whether it's modern or whatever, you need your stealth guy, you need your Warhammer guy. So, you start coming up with skills and assigning them and making sure that they're diverse enough that people, that you'll, depending who you choose, will fulfill a different thing, right? So before we start really writing it, we have all the characters, all of the villains, their powers and everything, and we have the map created. And we might even have an introduction and stuff like that that's inspiring and going, and that kind of heads it up. And then we get going. And yeah, each one of those is plot points. And we think of, like, I always, like, the one thing Tom does a lot of the writing, and working with Matt Forbeck is working on the Cats of New Orleans. I don't know if any of you guys know Matt Forbeck, but he's been writing for over 30 years. Amazing writer. Him and his 2 sons are working on it. And Pat and Marty. The other thing is, I like to look at interesting things in a story. If you play, anybody here who ends up playing the Cats of Mont Saint Michel, I almost guarantee you're going to cry in that story. There is tragedy and touchiness. Like, so I'm not just trying to create it. So yes, when you boil down to essence, it's a story with tactical combat, okay? But the story is very engrossing, and it's like moving. So there's parts where you're angry, there's parts where you're happy, there's parts when you're sad, there's parts that you'll cry. Like, there's the realizations occur when you're playing again, and you're like, oh my God, like, it's not even like they die, okay? It's not all about just killing something and then you're sad. No, it's like kind of worse in some ways, and sometimes better in other ways. And the results of what's happened, and then the conflict, the moral conflict that you sometimes will have to have, is you'll know that's what I had to do anyways. So, it's, I guess I get emotional about talking about it, because it's so, when I think about it, like, it's, I don't know. I guess when I'm creating a story, like, sometimes people think about it like, oh, you're doing a combat game and it's a story, so, like, whatever. But no, at least when we're doing it, we want to create stuff. And there's redemptive things. And there's, like, we have a character, who's a bad person, but his arc in the game, and you're going to fight them. And then later on, there's a chance for their redemption. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But if they do redeem themselves, or at least like, who knows how they redeem themselves, there'll be a story point as to why that happened or how it happened. Maybe not even why. You don't always know. So there's redemptive arcs for even for player characters. And the other, we have a Chaos Warrior in the Gates of Nilheim, which is the Viking one. And you can play a Chaos Warrior. He's, like, totally not cool, but, people like playing bad guys sometimes. And he's one of the heroes, so to speak, because, and he can be redemptive in the end, or he could be like a traitor, like, going for what he wants. So depending how you deal with it will change what happens to that guy, right? So to me, the story is more than the direct story. The story is about the overall thing and the emotional aspect. And with the Cats, we could really get more emotional. Like with like World War II guys, again, it's only, you can get somewhat emotional, and same with, Vikings. But with the Cats, because, we love our cats, I can get emotional.
Yeah. So let's pivot into leveling up and like the system that you use to level in between. One of the things that I find important about leveling up is that and like just gaining power in
Sure.
general over the course of a campaign style game is it needs to make you want to play the next
Yeah.
mission.
I got this new power,
Right?
so how does it
And
work?
if yeah, and or like I got enough experience that I get to unlock
Sure.
something versus I think one of the worst letdowns is like I got 3 experience points to spend and I put 2 here and 1 there and I don't have any new skills at all to play
Sure.
with. That is you know, maybe some people would like, oh well, it's optimal though. If I do it this way, then
Well, there'll be
you know, and that's like a very limited number of
there will
people.
be the people who like
But
to
like,
the min-max stuff, of course, right? So,
but like, how do you make it interesting? What does Cats of Mont Saint Michel do?
well, I'm going to tell you, each of my games is a different way, kind of, in some ways different. In the first game, there was only 3 skills to the whole game. In this second game, there was 9, and it was a matrix. And then with Nilheim, it was 9. And with the cats, it changed again because I started using cards. When there was just 3 skills, I felt it was enough because there's enough things happening that you have to worry about regarding gear and regarding in you know, Stalingrad Z was wintertime, so there's fatigue, there's being freezing freaking cold, and there's no food, so you're starving. So you have to deal with those things as well. And so there's a lot. So you know, it's great when you unlock your skill, but it's not the only thing you're worried about, or you don't need that. Like you didn't need that. Like, I don't excitement of having the next and have like just having to have like drugs. When it came to cats, I wanted to reduce the size of the rule book, so it's a medium like Project Riza and kind of medium heavy games. I wanted to reduce the size, so I put all the skills on cards. So it means you don't have to read about the skill until you get it, and then you have the card. You don't have to read through the rulebook with all this information really until it matters, right? And I also divided the rulebook in a way that you're playing it and learning it at the same time. So the way I did it, so we did it a few different ways before we figured out the one. One is I was just going to assign skills every X amount of scenarios. Second way, and then people were like, well, you know, it's cool, but, you know, I kind of want to feel like they're getting, like they're working towards it somehow. And I could see the value of that. So I didn't want to do experience points because I in this case, I'd done the other ones have experience points. I was like, I don't want to really experience points. I've done it. And then you're keeping track of these little experience points, which is nothing wrong, but it's just like, so in this case, what we did is we just kept it in gold. And so you just have to if you can choose with the gold to buy a silver knife, or you're going to, instead of buying a silver knife, you're going to wait and then get a little bit more and then get your first skill level. And the logic behind that was nobody just automatically is going to get, like, first of all, your heroes are heroes. So they're going to have heroic qualities, you know, that are untapped. And what they need to do is hire the trainer who's going to give them what they need, a coach. And so you're paying that coach to give you the skill. That's kind of how that logically transformed. But what it allowed me to do was allowed you to for people to choose between, am I going to another skill or do I want to get a healing potion? I got nailed really hard, so I can get the skill but not the healing potion. That as long as I survive to the next one, I'll have more. Then I'll get which one do I want to do? You kind of feel like what makes sense for you, what you care about. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of diversity there. So you're kind of building on gear and building on skills. That's how that one kind of moved forward. And then how it worked is there was 9 skills, but what happens is you got 3 first level skills, so you can't buy any second level skills till you get the first 3, and then it builds on that. There's 3 second level skills and there's 3 third level skills. But you can have 3 first level skills. You can only have 2 second level skills, so you have to pick up the 3 to 2 you want, and you can only have 1 third level skill. So you're going to have to start, and then that means if you ever play the game again, you could take a different, first of all, you might be using another hero, which there's 8 or 9 to choose from. You're going to use 4. But you can also diversify how you want to progress, right? So now when you go into a scenario, you're going to have, your options will be based on what choices you made before. So that's how skill progression works in the cats, and it will in New Orleans as well.
Very cool. And I like how there's this kind of a tension. So I think meaningful choices are is I guess the right way to begin. But tension is the word I use all the time, because it's like, should I go left or right? And the meaningful choice, if left gets me the treasure chest and then right finishes the scenario first and means that I don't lose as much health from, enemies, I may make one choice or another. But either way, the choice has meaning. I don't need then to have this chest, that chest, the other chest, this direction or that direction. The choice is no more meaningful unless you're deliberately trying to confuse me. Two of those chests are bad and whatever,
Sure.
But I think that a meaningful choice, you only need two options, and you could have more, but you just need two that are really good choices. And I think one thing that you do. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, you're talking about both choose your own adventure style stuff, right?
Yeah, but even in like a scenario,
I get even like objectives or secondary objectives. I get it. Yeah. Okay. So go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
Right. And so then when you're leveling up and you're advancing, one of the things that you do is you don't like refund health immediately after every single mission, right? You kind of have that level of health that you had at the beginning of the next mission. You in between the two, you need to balance getting cooler stuff. Like, yeah, I want that silver dagger, but I'm at 1 HP and I kind of need a health potion right now. That is based on the choices that I made previously, which makes me feel like the actions I take in a mission have consequences. And I think that that's a really important thing to infuse into the game. So I mean, you shared one way that you give players consequence, like your actions have consequences, is that after a mission you may have spent a lot of health, and because your health doesn't immediately refresh for the next mission, your actions you took during that mission, the consequences are that you have low health for the next mission start, or in between you need to fix it, right, by spending the gold that you gain. Are there I was going to ask, are there any other things that are like consequences to the actions, what things add weight to your choices in Cats of Mont Saint Michel?
Well, there'll be moral choices as well as just like what feels like the right thing to like the tactical choices, right? So you're going to have the difference between this is tactically sound, but I'll have a better chance of succeeding, but people might get hurt in the meantime, right? So you're gonna it's sometimes it's based on just winning, and I don't like to say winning in this, it's more like surviving, right? So I've survived to the next scenario. So you're going to have those kind of things that are going to come up, and you're going to have to kind of decide how you want to handle it. I mean, it's not every single scenario you have a moral choice. You don't want to be like bird and everything. Every time I play this thing, I end up crying at the end of the scenario because I had to save it. But yeah, that comes up. So you've got that kind of diversity of choices. You'll have the choices tactically during the scenario, like you said, like whether you're going to take damage on it, and you'll have the choices between scenarios or in between scenarios where it'll influence what you can get or what you want to do, which of the team members get it, who needs it, stuff like that. But there's also in the game itself, there's the tavern. So kind of like the cats get together and they go to the tavern. It's like after every good mission, we're gonna go get a beer. So there they go, almost always. But when you go to the tavern, the first thing you do is you draw a tavern events card. So there's an event. And that event could just be a funny anecdote, or it's just like a story-driven thing. It's not going to happen other than the stuff that you would do in the tavern, which is, you could heal up a bit, buy stuff, go to the market, you draw cards, see what you can buy and stuff like that. But this little event that counts, which could just be a fun thing. But it could be something where choices happen again. So there may be a opportunity, if you want to call it, where you get to make a choice, good or bad. So those things occur too, and it kind of fills out the story and makes it a bit, you're never going to go through all 20 cards. So basically, because you don't always get to go to the tavern. Sometimes like, there's no time. Just keep going, chop, they're getting away, right? So yeah, so there's those aspects too. It kind of makes every time you play it a little bit different. It's some of it's fun. Like you'll just laugh. It's hilarious.
Do you have like alternate
There's like cockroach races in one of them. It's like, okay, we're racing the cockroaches, and like everyone lines up their cockroaches, and then you actually play the cockroach race. So that's I mean, I guess if you don't really want to play, you don't have to. You just watch. But basically, there's rules. There's a whole set of rules for racing cockroaches across the tavern, and then whoever wins gets like whatever 10 gold or punching them out.
That's awesome. So do you have alternate endings to the game, or does it kind of your story collapses into a single ending? Your choices, do they influence the end of the game in any way? I know that sometimes people do that and sometimes people don't.
Okay, so there's always two endings. One is you live and one is you die. So there's always the die ending. Die Red Z, and there has 4 endings, one of which you die. And Project Risa has 4 endings, one of which you die. And but it's not. So with the cats, there's different endings based on the choices you make, and inevitably, if you want to really be successful, there's the one big ending. But there's other kind of minor victories along the way, which could occur and end sooner. And there's a lot of times when, well, not a lot. I won't make it sound exaggerated. There's a few times where when you fail. But when you fail. Like when you fail, like everyone with a party wipe, or you didn't stop something really bad that you had to stop, that which is closer to the end. But there's some early ones too that you gotta kind of be smart about. There's different levels of failure. Let's just put it that way. There's like, things went bad. Everyone on the mount kind of died, but the water didn't get any further. And then there's like end of the world shit. So yeah, depending what happens, to get different ends. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, where can people find you and, follow along with what it is that you've got going on so they can see, visual things and everything related to Cats of Mont Saint Michel and your other games?
Sure. Well, okay. On Facebook, we have a thing called Raybox Games, Paths Unknown Insiders, I think. And if you're interested in all the games we do, they're featured there. You could join our newsletter. So if you go to rayboxgames.com, www.rayboxgames.com, you can go and join a newsletter, and that we're on Discord. Look for Raybox. Just type in Raybox Games, and you'll get a bunch of places. So go specifically, I'm sharing painting techniques and stuff like that on Facebook. Right now, it's just easy for me to do that. So, and miniatures and new developments and stuff like that. And sure, we include all that sort of thing in the newsletter, abbreviated. And then there's Discord, and you can follow on Instagram, and you can email me. I'm if you have questions or if you're interested in anything, I'm always open to helping people, talking to them about stuff, and doing other things, podcasts and whatnot.
Awesome. Well, Marco, it's been a real pleasure having you on the podcast. I good luck in the next games you've got. And I'm personally, I'm a backer of Cats of Mont Saint Michel, and I'm excited to get
it soon.
And play it with my kids.
Well, I not too soon.
Yeah. So I saw production.
Yeah, it's out of production. It's finished. I just have to check the production copy. So it's the production copy. It's going to come to me and make sure, all the pages are backwards. Now we're screwed. That won't happen probably. But like if you go through it and then one page is reversed, like in every single copy, you're like, oh, geez, it's not my fault. That's not going to cost me anything. But so, well, it would be if I missed it in the preliminary. But that sort of thing. So it's really close. And Gates of Nilheim is also shipping too. So yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to it. And thanks for joining us. And
thank you.
Nerds, if you're listening to this and you enjoy, please give us an upvote or like thumbs up on YouTube. Give us a review on rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, whatever it is that you're listening. And then we'll see you on the next episode.
Ciao, everyone.
Hey, crowdfunding nerds, if you're looking for an awesome fulfillment partner for US shipping, you should really consider Bridge Distribution and Fulfillment. I personally use them. I've used them for multiple projects. They do such a great job. They also can fulfill Amazon orders and get you prepped for Amazon and their warehousing team. I have been so happy using Bridge Distribution. I'm really proud that they're sponsoring us. If you reach out, bridgedist.com, that's bridgedist.com, let them know we sent you. All right, now back to the show.